Hey there, I'm Jessica, and this is Bookshelf to Big Screen. Today, I'm talking about the book, The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, and the 2019 movie adaptation. Fair warning, I'll be talking about specific details in the book and movie, so there will be spoilers. The story follows two high school kids who meet and fall in love. And while I did enjoy the movie, this, for me, was a case where the book was better. We all know that the book will have more details than the movie, but I feel like there were key details that were left out here. The details were actually the things that made me really enjoy the book. Let's get into it. The basic story is the same. Natasha is a high school senior living in New York. She's from Jamaica, she's undocumented, and her family is being deported. Daniel is the American-born son of South Korean immigrants. He's also a high school senior who's on track to become a doctor, in line with his parents' wishes. One thing I really loved about this book was the way it told the story from several different perspectives. By doing this, we really see how everyone is connected. The story deals with fate and destiny, and by using this kind of storytelling, Yoon really drives the point of fate home. Each choice a person makes directly affects someone else, whether they're aware of it or not. In the book, the first big glimpse of this was the character Irene. Irene is a security guard at the immigration building that Natasha goes to try to find a way to stay in the US. But Irene holds her up and she misses her appointment. This leads to Natasha meeting with Lester Barnes, who in turn refers her to a lawyer who is then able to give her some hope. We find out that Irene is struggling with depression. She intentionally holds people up in the line just to have a brief connection with people every day. Later, when the lawyer tells Natasha that he thinks he can help her, she calls Lester and asks him to thank Irene, who was responsible for her ultimately meeting the lawyer. Irene had decided during her lunch break that she was going to kill herself that evening. But then, just before her shift ended, Lester told her that Natasha wanted to thank her. She didn't even know why she was being thanked, but that small gesture saved her life. She doesn't end up committing suicide. And for me, this small story was very powerful. But in the movie, there is no Irene. It was just so disappointing that this truly meaningful part of the book was left out. Another small but significant difference is Natasha's brother, Peter. In the book, Peter was born in America, but in the movie, Natasha tells Lester that he was born in Jamaica. I don't know why they decided to change this. Maybe they just wanted to make it seem like there was absolutely no hope that they'd be able to stay in the US. I don't know, but it definitely stuck out for me. Okay, let's talk a little about Daniel. In the book, we get more background on him. He's been playing second fiddle to his older brother Charlie most of his life. Charlie seems to have it all, even though he's a jerk. He's attended Harvard and he was the apple of his parents' eye until recently when he was placed on academic probation. Now, for the first time ever, his parents don't want Daniel to be more like his brother. Daniel's morning starts with him preparing for his interview for Yale, the second best school according to his mom. He has long hair but plans to get a haircut before his interview, and he's wearing a nice suit, a crisp white shirt, and a bright red tie. In the movie, we don't get to see how Charlie has been setting the standard for Daniel's life, but he still seems to be a jerk. I'm not sure the reason for changing this, but Daniel is preparing for his Dartmouth interview instead of Yale. Also, Daniel seems like he's a bit more rebellious, but in small ways. His ensemble is a little less put together, a bit more disheveled. He's wearing sneakers with his suit, and I think they only changed his tie color so that they could write in this bad pad thai joke.
Plaid tie?
Did you just call me pad thai?
While he's on his way into the city, Daniel's subway stops in the tunnel and the conductor starts talking. In the book, the conductor recently found God, and he takes this opportunity to spread his gospel to the passengers on the train. He tells them that they can find God if they look for him. Later, on the street, Daniel starts looking for signs. He sees a girl stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, completely lost in the song playing in her headphones. As she walks away, he sees that her jacket has Deus Ex Machina written on the back. He follows her until she walks into a store called Second Coming Records. He sees this as fate, and this is the beginning of his adventure with Natasha. In the movie, Daniel writes the phrase Deus Ex Machina in his notebook that morning before he leaves the house. When the train stops, the conductor takes the opportunity to tell them about a friend who missed the train on 9/11, and it saved his life. So they shouldn't be upset about being late because they might be right where they need to be. It's also really weird here that Natasha seems to be on the same train. I'm not sure why they decided to do this because it's clear in both the book and movie that they don't live in the same area, so it doesn't really make sense for them to be on the same train. So then Daniel sees Natasha standing in the middle of Grand Central Station while she's looking up at the ceiling, and he's like, "No one looks up," which impresses him for some reason. When he sees the writing on her jacket, he's excited because he was thinking of the same phrase that morning, and so he follows her. I guess the book version might have been harder to portray on screen, but I wish they would have tried something else. Having Daniel randomly write down this phrase seems so forced, and I think it changes the whole driving force of fate. I think by having him write down the phrase makes him choose her, kind of like now he's looking for only her. The other way, there's two signs, which makes it much more than coincidence and more convincing as fate. Following this is their meet cute. In the book, Daniel starts talking to Natasha in the record store as they witness her boyfriend making out with another girl and shoplifting together. They shared this charming encounter which encourages Daniel to continue to follow Natasha. Then he saves her from almost getting hit by a car. They go for coffee and he begins his quest to convince her that love is real. In the movie, they go straight to Daniel saving her from the car. It's effective, but it's definitely not as endearing. They skip the coffee shop and go sit in a park instead. Natasha gives him 1 hour to prove scientifically that he can make her fall in love with him. And then they go have lunch. We see Natasha arguing on the phone with her father, and Daniel gets a call saying that his interview has been rescheduled for tomorrow morning. Then they walk to Natasha's appointment, where Daniel realizes his appointment was at the same address. He points this out to Natasha, saying that it proves it's fate. In the book, Daniel walks with Natasha to her appointment. While she's inside, Daniel calls to reschedule his appointment for later in the day. It turns out they were about to call him to reschedule anyway, but I think this is an important detail in the book. Daniel consciously chooses to put his future, what his parents have worked so hard for, at risk and on hold when he made that call. This is a huge leap of faith for him, deciding that he'd rather risk this interview to spend some more time with this girl who he believes is his destiny. When Natasha comes out of the building, she's happy to find Daniel is still there. She goes with him to his father's store where he needs to drop something off. In the book, Daniel is very stressed about Natasha meeting his dad and brother. He knows that his dad won't approve of him being with a black girl, and Charlie has been established as a jerk, so he's worried about his reaction too. They encounter Charlie first, who makes a crack about thinking that Daniel had caught her shoplifting. Natasha grabs Daniel's hand to pull him away from Charlie, but Charlie sees this and makes a big deal of it. He says that his parents won't be mad at him anymore once they find out that Daniel is dating a black girl. Then they run into Daniel's dad, who sees them holding hands. Daniel makes a point not to speak in Korean with his father so that Natasha doesn't think that they are talking about her. Natasha has an awkward moment when Daniel's dad offers her some relaxer so her hair won't be so big because she wears it in an afro. And when Charlie makes a crass comment, Daniel grabs her hand and leads her out of the shop. The movie encounter is pretty similar with two key differences. First, there's been no indication of Charlie's academic suspension, so he doesn't have the opportunity to say how much worse it is for Daniel to bring home a black girl. Second, They don't play up on what a big deal it is for Daniel to be holding hands with Natasha in front of his family. This was a major act of defiance for the sake of love that we don't get to see. From here, in the book, they go to eat at a Korean place that Daniel chooses. We have more nice details here. How he's happy that she's not afraid to try the food, how much she enjoys the food, and a little side story with the waitress. Again, the book shows us how we might not realize what others are going through. The kids are put off by the waitress who tells Daniel that he needs to show Natasha how to use chopsticks instead of giving her a fork when she asks. But we learn that the waitress is no longer in contact with her own son, who angered his father by marrying a non-Korean woman. Now she has 2 grandkids that she's never even met. And instead of being angry with this woman for being rude, maybe we can see her sadness and start to empathize. After the restaurant, they go next door to Norebang. Daniel puts on a wonderful show singing ABBA's Take a Chance on Me. Natasha is very entertained. She can't stop laughing. Then she sings, very badly, a rendition of Soundgarden's Fell on Black Days. Even though she's singing badly, she gets lost in the song and lets go of all her apprehensions. At the end of it, they finally have their moment. It gets a little hot and heavy until they're interrupted by the waitress. Then Natasha wants to take Daniel to the Museum of Natural History because it's her favorite place in New York. But on the subway ride there, she finally confesses that it's her last day in America. Daniel responds pretty poorly, blaming her for postponing his appointment. They argue and they part ways, and Natasha goes to the museum alone. The movie timeline is a little different. After leaving Daniel's family's shop, Natasha takes him to the museum. Then they go to Norebang, but it plays out a little differently. The song Daniel chooses is Crimson and Clover, which is much more romantic and intense than his silly ABBA choice in the book version. Natasha sits mesmerized and has this vision of their future together. They still have their hot and heavy moment, but they're interrupted by Natasha's phone timer. She tells him that his dreams are screwing up her life and she runs out. When Natasha tells him that she's being deported the next day, Daniel is not really angry like he is in the book. He pleads with her, telling her that they can find a way, but she just walks away and he lets her go. I want to stop and talk about the music for a minute. I read this book on my Kindle, and at the end there was an interview with Nicola Yoon. The interviewer asks her how important was it to her to portray an atypical Black girl with unique interests. He asks this because Natasha is into science and loves grunge rock in the book. I really loved Yoon's answer. She said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, "I think what your question is getting at are the very limited portrayals of Black girl experiences in mainstream media. Natasha is not atypical. There are many Black girls who are nerdy and like rock and roll, and it was really important to me to write about a girl we don't often see, but exists and deserves to be seen." How powerful is that? This girl is not a rarity. She's just not a stereotype. The book gives us a lot of details on Natasha's love of 90s rock, so it was kind of disappointing to hear the movie soundtrack full of hip-hop. Don't get me wrong, I like all of the music in the movie. And I get that having a girl listen to 90s rock in a movie that was made in 2019 doesn't make a lot of sense. But after reading that interview, it just seems like a kick in the face to just show Natasha listening to hip hop. And I really wish they would have found something different for her to be into. Okay, back to the story. In the book, Natasha goes back to the attorney's office. He tells her that he thinks he'll be able to help her. It's important to talk about this lawyer here because there's a few key differences between the book and the movie. The book, of course, gives us more information. His name is Jeremy Fitzgerald. We find out that he's married with 2 kids and he was hit by the same car that almost hit Natasha, which is why her meeting was rescheduled. This accident caused him to reevaluate his priorities, and he decided to confess his love to his paralegal. And they were making out right before Natasha walked in, which she notices. Attorney Fitzgerald also happens to be the Yale alum that Daniel has his interview with. When Daniel meets with him that evening, he encounters a heartbroken paralegal. Because he's thrown off due to his romantic dealings with his paralegal, the attorney ends up telling Daniel about Natasha's case, after Daniel notices her case files sitting on his desk. Mr. Fitzgerald says that he wasn't able to help her after all, that there was nothing to be done and she's going to be deported that night after all. The truth is, Mr. Fitzgerald missed his appointment with the judge because he was in a hotel room with his paralegal. Again, in the book, we see these choices and the chain of events that results from them. Daniel is so upset the lawyer was just going to tell her over the phone that he runs out of his interview so that he can be the one to break the news to her in person. In the end, Mr. Fitzgerald did leave his family and lived happily ever after with his paralegal. In the movie, Jeremy Fitzgerald is replaced with Jeremy Martinez, which I don't mind at all because he's played by John Leguizamo, whom I love. He tells Natasha that he thinks he can help her. He's also our Dartmouth alum, and there is no relationship with his paralegal. When he meets with Daniel the next day, Natasha interrupts the meeting and asks him to tell her if her family gets to stay. He says he wasn't able to help, but for legitimate reasons, and she storms off, and Daniel follows her, ending his interview. At the end of the movie, we're told 5 years has passed and Natasha meets with Mr. Martinez. He tells her that the day when he was hit by the car, he didn't want to go to the hospital, but he was glad that he did because his doctor became his wife. So he's just an innocent bystander in the movie who's also touched by fate, versus someone who plays a part in Natasha's deportation. Speaking of Natasha's deportation, it's time we talk about Samuel Kingsley. Throughout the movie, Natasha keeps flashing back to memories of her dad. She talks to him throughout the day, and when she finally talks to Daniel about him, she tells him that it wasn't his fault, that ICE does these random raids and her dad just happened to be in the kitchen that day. When Natasha finally comes home the next morning, she has a small confrontation with her dad, but it's more about her not wanting to accept the fact that they have to leave. In the book, Samuel Kingsley plays a much larger role. You see, he went to New York ahead of his family with the dream of becoming an actor. He actually spent 2 years in America before Natasha's mom was finally fed up and reunited her family by bringing Natasha with her to New York. 9 months later, Natasha's brother was born. What we don't see in the movie is that Natasha's dad struggled with the trials and rejection that come along with all the auditioning. He stopped working altogether at one point. He stopped going to auditions. Natasha's mom grew tired and annoyed with him while she was working 2 jobs just to keep her family afloat in their 1-bedroom apartment that she hated. And finally, Samuel gets a part, the lead in A Raisin in the Sun at a small theater. He's so excited. Natasha and her brother go and watch his performance. She says his performance was transcendent. He celebrates that night, drinks too much, ends up getting a DUI. Then he tells the cop his life story, that he's undocumented and a failed actor. And of course, the cop calls immigration. And that's how his family gets deported. Natasha overhears her parents arguing about it, and she hears her dad say that he regrets having a family because maybe then he could have been an actor if they hadn't held him back. Natasha is crushed and hurt and angry. And so at this point, she's not even speaking to her dad. When Natasha finally takes Daniel home with her, she actually confronts her dad. She tells him that she overheard him and she gets all her feelings out. In the end, the whole family is hugging and they're starting to heal. And now we're at the ending. In the movie, 5 years have passed. We see Natasha back in New York. She meets with Mr. Martinez in hopes of getting contact information for Daniel. He says that he has no way of contacting him and he leaves. Just before Natasha leaves, she sees that Daniel is actually working right there at that coffee shop. My problem with this ending is that Natasha is actively looking for Daniel, and it's not really a matter of fate. I also don't like this ending because I read the book, and in this case, the book was better. You remember that little side story with Irene? Well, at the end of the book, 10 years have passed and Irene is doing well. She's a flight attendant. And now, on her current flight, she sees the girl who saved her life. She goes to thank her, telling her that she saved her life, and she asks if she remembers her. The girl says yes, she remembers, and that her name is Natasha. And the young Korean man, writing in his notebook in the row right in front of them, turns around and says, "Natasha?" And it's Daniel. Come on! That's how you end a story where two people are destined to be together, right? There you have it, folks. That's my recap on The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon and the 2019 movie adaptation. Was there anything else that you noticed? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this recap, please click like. And be sure to click subscribe to see my next video. Thanks for watching.